A new study this morning reveals the damaging effects of marijuana use. This research comes from the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
It finds that long-term marijuana use deteriorates the part of the brain responsible for decision-making. The effects are more severe in people who start using at a young age.
I'm now living in Thailand for 2 years, and the idea was in that 2-year time frame to build an organization and also to create streams of income online whereby that can fund my lifestyle. So since moving to Thailand, I realized that another thing I was also doing was becoming sober, because I was a weed addict.
Well, there have been studies done in mice showing that if chronic marijuana use makes the frontal lobe of the brain smaller. And the data in humans just wasn't that definitive. Now, with over 100 individuals studied with and without marijuana use, we can clearly say that people who use marijuana have a smaller frontal lobe, the decision-making part of the brain. But what's interesting is they also have more connections out of that area. And the more structural changes happen, the younger they start. But after 6 or 7 years, those structural changes start to go away.
And I struggle with the term addict because I never really felt that I was. I never really liked the idea of owning that because I didn't really think of myself as an addict. But I was man enough to address it as such. I reached out to some friends. A week before Thailand, I decided, okay, I'm done, and started to detox. And I'm talking, so I was smoking every day, twice a day, generally in the evening. And at the time I knew that it was a detriment. I knew that it was definitely causing me to be more of a procrastinator. Weed may not seem like something that's that big a deal, but it's a substance. And when you become addicted to a substance, it's something that kind of controls you and hinders your production in this life, your contribution to this world, and your contribution to your own self.
Cannabis seems to have been causally related to several instances of cerebral ischemia and infarction. Now, these are scary words. If you look it up in a dictionary, the real meaning of ischemia, which changes a little bit in context in medical literature, and infarction may surprise you. But this is stating very clearly marijuana causes brain damage. Again, if you want to read every word of this, you can pause the screen or you can follow up through the footnotes, find these articles, and read the studies in full. But I quote, "Learning and memory are often correlated with cellular changes within the hippocampus, and drugs or environmental factors which affect learning and memory will thus often induce observable morphological changes in the structure. In the current study, we investigate whether or not these changes could be related to structural changes within the hippocampus." Now, they do this through torturing a certain type of rat to death. And now if we skip down to the highlighted portion at the bottom, it says, "This work shows the potential for cannabinoids to influence hippocampal morphology. The pattern of changes may be similar to that seen after ischemic or toxic damage." Guys, if you don't know what this means, it's talking about brain damage.
You know, happiness, true happiness comes from being who you're meant to be. And for me, I always knew that I would be someone great if I just applied myself. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life. I'm not saying that I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life, because that's a commitment that I just can't see myself completely owning.
Marijuana consumption elicits diverse physiological and psychological effects in humans, including memory loss. Skipping ahead to the final sentence here, these data suggest that some of the memory deficits caused by cannabinoids may be caused by THC neurotoxicity. On some level, I think that most people who use cannabis are accustomed to making excuses for what this article is attesting to, measuring that in effect, quote, long-term cannabis users perform significantly less well than shorter-term users and controls on tests of memory and attention. They had worse memory, worse ability to pay attention. Persistent behavioral effects resembling those of hippocampal brain lesions have been reported following chronic administration of marijuana or its major psychoactive constituent, THC, to rats. We used morphometric techniques to investigate the effects of chronic THC on the anatomical integrity of the hippocampus. The rats were dosed with THC, and then electron micrographs revealed a striking ultrastructural appearance and statistically significant decrease in the mean volume of neurons and their nuclei sampled from the hippocampal CA3 regions of rats treated with the highest doses of THC. A 44% reduction in the number of synapses per unit volume was demonstrated in these same rats. A lot of people watching this video now have probably used marijuana for 5 years or more at some point in their life, whether or not they're doing so today. Guess what? In this period of 5 years, at the beginning, cortical thickness did not differ between patients and controls and between cannabis-using and non-using patients. Over the follow-up period, we found excessive thinning of the right supplementary motor cortex, inferior frontal cortex, superior temporal gyrus, angular gyrus, occipital and parietal lobe in patients relative to controls after controlling for cannabis use. Cannabis users had bilaterally reduced hippocampal and amygdala volumes. Right? You can read through all the details here about the precise location and nature of the brain damage. It's the type of research this is. Conclusions. These results provide new evidence of exposure-related structural abnormalities in the hippocampus and amygdala in long-term heavy cannabis users and corroborate similar findings in the animal literature. Vegans generally are people who have questioned and rejected the premise that yogurt was essential to their health, who have questioned many things they were told by parents, teachers, doctors, and marketing agencies. Vegans generally are people who have been willing to question cultural assumptions of what healthy means. Why would it be any harder for us to question the myths surrounding cannabis? It causes brain damage. There is proof.
Dun, 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 dun.